Good morning or good afternoon, grade 10s. This is our next video in our finance unit, and I believe this one is probably going to be one of the most important learnings, how interest can work for you and work against you, and the difference between simple and compound interest are all going to be covered in this video. So let's just do a little review. We've talked about interest before. What is interest? Oh, and by the way, there's a worksheet to go with this, and you should open it and work through it as you work through this video. So we all know that interest is the rate a financial institution charges for the money it lends, or the rate you would earn to invest your money in a bank account or in a GIC or a bond. Okay, interest rates rise and fall depending upon different situations, and we'll talk about a couple of those. And we talked about prime interest rate already at the beginning of this course, and we talked about the prime rate being the lowest rate of interest at which money may be borrowed commercially. To make that a little easier for you guys to understand, basically it is the interest rate that banks give to their best customers. So most often banks' best customers are large corporations. So large corporations usually get the lowest interest rates because they are not risky. They always pay back their loans and stuff like that. So remember, risk versus return. If you are a risky customer, the bank is going to charge you a higher interest rate. And if you have a bad credit rating, the bank will charge you a higher interest rate. So generally speaking, corporations don't have bad credit ratings and they get the best rates. It is possible, though, for you and I to get the prime rate. I have the prime rate, and it is on my line of credit. Basically, again, it describes the standard interest rate, and it is set by the Bank of Canada. Okay, there are many reasons that interest rates go up and down. One of them is the economy. When the economy is doing well, people have jobs, people are feeling secure, and people want to buy large items, dishwashers, furniture, vacations, and sometimes they need to borrow money. So as the demand for money goes up, so does the interest rate. We talked about supply and demand at the beginning of this course. Interest rates work similarly. So the more people want to borrow, the more demand for borrowing, and the banks can increase their interest rates. However, when the economy is doing poorly, people are not working as often, they're not taking vacations, they're not buying larger items, therefore fewer people are borrowing, and this leads to banks having to lower their interest rates to make borrowing attractive. Interest rates and how they affect investments. Generally speaking, and this makes sense, the higher the interest rate, the more money you will make when you're investing your money. However, conversely, when you're borrowing money, the higher the interest rate, the more money you will have to pay to borrow that money. We've talked about bonds. Bonds are just like you loaning your money to the government at a set period of time and a set interest rate. So you will make your money plus the interest rate at the end of the time period. They will pay you interest on your principal. That's what you put in at first. Principal is going to be a term you're going to know really well by the end of this worksheet. And the interest rate is given, is applied to that principal over a period of time. So the institution that issues the bond must pay higher interest rates than the bank, otherwise people would just put their money in a bank. And bonds are transferable usually. This means you could sell your bond earlier if you need to. However, if the bank interest rates on your bank account rises above the interest rate of the bond, the price you can sell your bond for now decreases because people won't want to buy that bond from you. Okay, how do we calculate simple interest? And this is very simple. Don't let this formula scare you. It's basically interest equals your principal times your interest rate times time. Okay? So you can write that down in your worksheet. And here's the first example. If you were to invest $530 in a savings account that paid 1.5% interest for 2 years, how much interest would you make? And how much money would you have in your savings account? Well, if you look here, I've done the first example for you, and I've done it right on your worksheet. So question question 6, the answer is done for you. Basically, our formula is principal times interest times time. And I've put in the principal is the $530 that you put in the savings account. The 1.5% interest, here's another way of looking at it, is 0.5% is actually 0.015, just like 10% would be 0.1, and the time was 2 years. So if you look, I used a formula, and I'll double click on that so you can see it's this cell, B16, times C16 times D16. And the little asterisks here are the multiplication sign when you're using a formula in a spreadsheet. Remember to always start your formulas with plus or equals. So basically, and I'm going to show you this again, I'm going to delete this and show you how I did it. I went equals, and I clicked on that cell, times, I put in the asterisk, that cell, the asterisk again, and that cell, and then enter, and that gives you the $15.90. So that's how much interest you would make. The second part is how much money would you now have in your savings account? Well, that's going to be the interest, the principal, what you originally put in, plus the interest you earned. So again, I used a formula here. You can see it's, all I did was equals B16, which was our principal, plus that cell. And I'll do it again for you so you see again. So equals, click on the cell that you want to start with, put the plus in, click on the other number you want to add, hit enter, and there you go. There's the answer to part 2. So you're going to be using formulas for the rest of these questions on your worksheet. So example 2 is on your worksheet, and the table is pretty much built for you. You just need to put in your formulas. So this one is if you were to invest $1,000, that's your principal, in a GIC, Guaranteed Investment Certificate, that paid you 5% interest, so that's going to be 0.05 interest for 5 years. How much money would you receive on the date the GIC matured? So that means you have to add at the end, again, like we did in the other one, your interest to your original principal. Okay, another example. This one is a comparison one between two investments. So if Peter invests $300 at an interest rate of 3.5%, that's 0.035 for 9 years, and you invest $400 at an interest rate of 2.25%, 0.0225 for 9 years, who would earn more interest? You can go, I put all this tables in the spreadsheet that you'll need to work on to do this math. Okay, compound interest. Compound interest is really interesting, and it could cost you a lot of money to borrow in compound interest, and it could earn you a lot of money if you're investing at compound interest. So basically, compound interest is interest that is paid on both the principal and also on any interest you earned that year. It is often used when someone reinvests any interest they gained back into the original investment. So let's take a look. There is a crazy formula, future value, so that's what you're going to have at the end of the investment, equals your principal times 1 plus your interest to the exponent of time. I'm not going to actually get you to use this. I'm going to get you to use a table and calculate this all in a table so you can see the math every year. But if you want to be quick, you can try this for some of you smarty pantses and just use this formula. So here's an example, and I'm going to go through it in a table. I'll show you both of these. If I got 2% interest on my $1,000 investment the first year, and I reinvested the money back into the original investment, then in the second year, I would get 2% interest on the 1,000 plus my 20 that I earned, that I reinvested. Over time, compound interest will make much more money than simple interest. So let's look at this example. So here's a table, your interest rate, and I'm going to show you the calculation, your interest earned, and the total value. I simplified this a little bit on your worksheet for you when you have to do this yourself. So here's year one. The interest rate was 2%. 0.02 is 2%. So 1,000 is your principal times the rate equals your interest. And the time is times 0.1. So you're going to get $20. So your principal here you started with plus the 20 you earned is now how much you have left. So if you invested this amount in the same investment in year 2, you're going to do the same thing again, and you're going to get $20.40 of interest. And now if you add that to that principal that you had, you're going to get $1,040 as your principal plus your interest for that year. If you do it again for a third year, you put this whole amount, which is right there, times it by that interest rate for 1 year. You're going to get 20.81. See, it's growing each year, and so on. So now let's take a look at that formula I showed you. Future value is your principal times 1 plus your interest rate. This could also be I to the exponent of time. So you would have 1,000 times 1, there's the 1 there, times your interest rate was 0.02 to the exponent of 4. So with BEDMAS, we do exponents first. You do brackets, then exponents. So you get this, 1.02 to the exponent of 4 is this number, times it by that, and you get 1,082.43 after the 4 years at compound interest. So let's look at our table. We got the same number by using a table. So whatever you're more comfortable with, I suggest you use. Okay, I'm going to flip back to your worksheet because I did a simple versus compound interest example on your worksheet. So highlighted in yellow on your worksheet so you could easily find it, I have these 2 examples. So this is going to be a sample compound interest versus a simple interest situation. So we're going to assume that we invested $1,000 at 5% compound interest for 10 years. So here's the $1,000 times our interest rate, and that's going to give us $50. Remember, principal times interest times time. I don't have the times time in here because it's only 1 year, and timesing anything by 1 just makes it equal to the exact same thing. So if we did this times 1, it's going to be $50. So just, we all know that. So then we have the interest plus the principal that we invested at the beginning of the year is going to be $1,050. Again, I used a formula for this. You can double click on any of these cells to see the formulas at any time. So I just added our principal plus our interest. And that's what gets reinvested next year. So we now have 1,050 times 5%, 5250, and then you add those together. This plus this equals this. And then that number is what gets reinvested the next year, and so on. So at the end of the 10 years, you're going to end up with $1,628.89 is what you're going to have in that account. However, if you just were offered simple interest on that account, you would have your $1,000, which is the same, your 5% interest, which is the same, times the time. You're going to end up with $500 interest at the end. So add it to the principal. This plus this. So what you invested plus the interest you earned equals $1,500. So now, comparing the two, if the compound interest is going to give you $1,628.89 versus $1,500. So $128.89 more using compound interest. I would always recommend invest with compound interest over simple interest. Okay, the next example that I would like to show you is compound interest plus additional investment each year. And again, if we go to the worksheet that we're working on, the second one here, highlighted in yellow so you can find it easier, is going to be our example. So in this case now, very same question as before, this one here, but what we're going to do is we're going to reinvest $1,000 every year. So year 1, we invested $1,000. Year 2, we added $1,000. So every single year, you're adding $1,000 to the same account that offered you compound interest. So it's a sample compound interest with an additional $1,000 invested each year. Okay, so here's our first year $1,000 times our interest rate. And if you see, I'll click on that to show you my formula. This times this equals $50. You're going to add that to the original to get your principal plus interest. So I use the formula, that plus that. And of course, it's going to equal $1,050. Now we're adding another $1,000 each year. So here's the another $1,000, add it to that, and you're going to end up with $2,050. You can see that plus that. So that's the new amount that's getting reinvested each year. So this times this equals that. Add those two together to get your principal plus interest. I added this plus this. And then add the additional $1,000. So now it's this plus this equals that. Now, after year 2, you have 3,152 times 50 because you added the additional 1,000. And you're going to start with that amount. So if you keep going for 10 years, if you invested $1,000 per year at 5% compound interest, you would end up with $14,000. And you really only put in $10,000. So you earned $4,000. That's an amazing investment. So I'm going to get you to do these exercises on your own here. This is a compound interest one where you just have one-time investment. It says once here. And then I'm going to get you to do these there's 3 questions in total. I think there's 4 because I get you to compare. And that's the end of today's video. I want you to work on part 2 here. You'll see here. Interest assignment, which means finish part B of the worksheet. Part B actually starts up here because there's a couple of simple interest questions I want you to do. I put the formulas in here again. Maybe I should highlight them yellow for you so you can see them easily as well. Okay, hope that helped. We'll see you tomorrow.